What's up, duelists? Today I played the two plant decks from the most recent RBET Santa Clara. And if you guys want to play in an RBET, you guys have a deck list, you want to show off, you think you can take to the highest point of competitive gameplay, check the description below for RBET Denver. More RBET announcements will be coming soon. A lot of people have been asking. But yes, more RBET announcements will be coming soon. Sign up for RBET Denver. If those signups do well, it makes it a lot easier for me to do more tournaments. So, all right, anyway, getting into the decks. This is Tan's deck list from RBET Santa Clara. I tried it in an 8-man tournament. I'm going to show you the matches. And then this is Brett's list from RBET Santa Clara. Jacob Plant style list, similar to the list that topped RBET Los Angeles, which I played on this channel before and have had mixed results with, mixed opinions on. And I'll tell you my thoughts basically on these after I show you guys the gameplay. So the first gameplay we're going to watch is going to be playing this list, the Tan list. This is my match against Ikusu. So just showing off what the deck does. It's basically a stall deck that either aims to deck people out or burn them out with Wave Motion Cannon. You use Polynosis and Dark Bribe to defend your back row, as well as Solemn and Starlight Road. You have a bunch of back row that's intention is to slow the opponent down. We'll get into that in a second, but at least 15 of the cards actually slow the opponent down. And then you have Titanial as a way to sort of stick your back row as well, your Floodgate style back row. It's a pretty solid deck. I actually really like the Polynosis mini engine using plants. Hedge Guard is a very nice quote-unquote hedge versus things like Kalut and Honest, no pun intended. And the 2100 defense stat actually does come up against walling out Cyber Dragon specifically. So pretty cool deck list overall. The side deck, we'll get into that in a second. Let's just watch this game. So game one, things are going well. You look at my hand here. I've got the Hedge Guard. I've got the Botanical Lion. I've got 2 copies of Black Garden. I've got Prickle Fairy. So this hand is pretty weak. I've drawn 3 monsters. My deck only plays 13. So drawing half of your starting hand being monsters is statistically unlikely. That's fine though. Also, one of them is not Morphing Jar. Keep that in mind. One of them is not Morphing Jar. And then we've drawn 2 copies of Black Garden. So the thought process behind Black Garden is it does slow the game down. It can act as like a Monster Reborn in some circumstances. But I actually think it's incredibly bad in this deck. Like just throughout this match, I'm going to show you guys, I really dislike Black Garden in this deck. I think I sided out some copies of it and I still found myself breaking on it. It doesn't stop the opponent from attacking you. It gives your opponent lanes to attack you. It conflicts directly with Kaiser Coliseum and Messenger of Peace. And it also conflicts with, there's one other thing it conflicted with. But the point is that I think it doesn't help this deck. I think it's actually quite bad in this deck. So that's my opinion on the Black Garden. This is Tan's Garden Salad deck. It's in the title of his deck. So he does want to play Black Garden. But I do think if you were to take this deck a little bit more seriously, you could probably take it even further without playing Black Garden, honestly. All right, so I set the terraforming because of this exact specific thing. I want to bait spell and trap removal before I stick my 1/1 Gravity Bind. This is your NFT. No, I'm just kidding. This is your fucking limited Floodgate style card that you don't want to just throw away. This card can bring you back even if you're losing 0 cards to 6. You know what I mean? So you want to hang on to this card, you want to bait the removal for it early, and that's exactly what we've done by setting our second copy of Black Garden functionally and baiting this Heavy Storm, and it works out really, really well for us. So the opponent's going to go Heavy Storm. At this point, I didn't recognize how many cards he was playing in deck because the sleeves were like light colored, and I didn't see it was 39 cards in deck. So I didn't realize he was playing 45 cards, but keep that in mind. Let's take a look at his hand. He's got a pretty fucking insane hand for someone playing 45 cards. I mean, you got Heavy Storm plus a pretty strong OTK draw. He pitches to special the Greffer, pitches the Vayu, sends the Malicious, so he's playing Malicious in his Vayu Turbo deck, activates Malicious, brings out Malicious, sacks for Caius, Caius targets the bot line, activates Vayu, brings out his guys, hits me down to, I believe, 1600 here. Might be 1400, I'm not sure. Anyway, I think it's 1600, yeah. And then passes a turn back. We now draw Rivalry of Warlords. So that's why we baited the Heavy Storm. We wanted to try and check for spell and trap removal. Now we've got exactly what our deck wants, which is comeback cards, Rivalry, Gravity Bind. Makes sense. Take a look at this Black Garden. What is it doing here? Nothing. It's doing nothing. So we just set, set pass the turn, flip the rivalry, force him to pick one of these types in play. He decides to keep Warrior, which is interesting. So he activates Dark Grepher, pitches a Sirocco, sends Necrogardna. Alright, attacks into the Prickle Fairy. I have never read this card in my life, and I still won't. He says it has an effect in the chat here, and I was like, you can tell me whatever this card does, I am not going to read it. I draw into a third copy of Black Garden, and this is where I'm like, okay, I've drawn 3 monsters and 3 Black Gardens. This can't be like a normal circumstance, but Rivalry is so good that it's keeping us in this game. Granted, if my opponent draws a Caius, they can Caius under Rivalry because of the way it's ruled in Edison format. Maybe not a lot of people know that, but that's just the way it works. But we still have 3 sort of ways to contend with that Caius in play. He would have to sack for Caius, target the set card, which he's unlikely to do, to really start to gain some momentum. So, yeah, at this point, I activate the Black Garden just to see, like, does this do anything? He top decks Rhoda, so he can actually summon another monster. This is actually a big mistake. Once you get 2 monsters in play that are warriors, now you're completely locked out. Now you can't sack one of them for Caius. You would need to find Gores, tribute set the Gores, and then tribute that for Caius later on. But here comes Armageddon Knight. He's going to have a 700 guy, send the value. Switch, try to run over the token. I don't want to take that damage because that's significant damage, so I flip the Gravity Bind here. He passes back, we draw Wave Motion, perfectly timed. Once again, Black Garden not really doing anything this game. Like, it did not contribute to the strategy at all. And we drew 3 copies of it. So if there was a way to not play Black Garden and have +3 like active cards for this strategy, I could see it being very, very threatening. So anyway, switch, activate Wave Motion, pass the turn. He sets D-Prison. It's just a completely dead card in this matchup. He draws Dark Grepher, passes the turn back to us after pitching, sending Plague. We draw Kaiser Coliseum, so now we're like really solidifying the lock. We're starting to draw more Floodgate pieces. We still have drawn quite a large number of monsters and Black Gardens compared to our Floodgate pieces, but we've drawn enough to win the game, so that's all that really matters. He sets the Torrential, we find Dark Bribe, he finds Return, sets Return, passes the turn. He's pretty much locked out of this one. There's no combination of cards I think that he could draw at this point that can get him in 4 specific draw steps. Plus he's playing a higher number of cards, so he's just got less consistent seeing his outs, basically. So yeah, just draw pass. He draws a Stratos, which is interesting, but at this point he has no other heroes, so it's not really going to fucking matter. He could have returned back Malicious, Normal Stratos, use the effect to pop to maybe try and break out of this, but then he just loses to the Wave Motion Cannon on the way back, so it doesn't really matter. So that was game 1. Now, one thing I noticed when I was siding, look at this wonderful hand, is that when I was going to side with this deck, 6 of the cards are time cards. 7 arguably with Ceasefire, 8 arguably with Lava Golem. So you have 7 time cards, but I'm playing an online 8-man tournament where there's no time control. So I just don't have a sideboard. So I just don't have a side deck, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my gosh, I would love to side out these Black Gardens, but I have nothing I can bring in. I actually don't have an entire, like in my entire sideboard, I have nothing to bring in this matchup except for 1 Typhoon. And I'm sitting here like, how in the hell do I play this? Because he's going to get all these Dust Tornadoes, he's going to get all these things. I have some thoughts on this. I'll mention it after the game. I'll just show you guys the rest of the game and we'll get to it. Once again, I've drawn 4 monsters in my 14 monster deck. 13 monster deck, none of which are Morphing Jars. So 4 out of 12 of my monsters, really unfortunate. Here comes Dark Grepher, pitches a value, sends a Necrogardna. I draw Black Garden. So once again, Black Garden I just think is not a good card in this deck. Like straight up, I do not think it does enough. It doesn't floodgate the opponent, it doesn't prevent attacks, it doesn't prevent pressure. It just doesn't do anything in this deck. It's a vibe. It's a vibe for sure, but it just doesn't do enough. He sent Necro here, so I'm like pretty confident I lose this one. If he has a Caius, I'm forced to Polynosis that, and then things just cascade out of control. If we take a look at his hand, you'll notice he has Space Typhoon and Dark Arm Dragon, so he's going to be able to play through 1 negate, which is really annoying because he's drawn 2 specific 1-ofs that allow him to play through my specific hand in his 45 card deck. So just pretty unlucky, but it is what it is. Attack here, he does Necro the attack. I considered not attacking, but then he can still just use the Necro to Grave Control for Dad, so there's no real point in not attacking. Better to force it and just not have to deal with it later if I need to. I could have also set the Bot Lion, but then he just... Yeah, I could have set the Bot Lion, it doesn't matter. Like, no matter what happens here, I'm getting Typhoon Dadded, so it doesn't matter. Like, this game is just over no matter what. He pitches Sirocco, he sends Vayu, he activates Typhoon, hits the back row, specials Dad. We get a token. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter at this point. The game's just over. Dad pops, blows up the garden. His dad should be at 1400. I correct that here in a second. He makes Armwing, specials Gale, synchros into Goyo. Dad pops the Botanical Lion. Gale halves the token. And yeah, he has a pretty serious OTK draw here in 45 cards. And he's playing a significantly larger number of bricks than your average value turbo hand. So a diluted OTK hand, still very, very, even more lucky than whatever. But the point is that I didn't have sideboard cards. I couldn't side out this garden for like another rivalry. I couldn't side out this garden for like a Gozen match or for like, I don't know, Royal fucking Oppression. Something that would have prevented this. But I don't have a sideboard, so I can't do anything with it. So I'm just sitting here like, wow, I'm getting not only sacked by a less consistent version of Vayu Turbo, but I'm also getting sacked without a sideboard, like getting sacked by not having a sideboard because I just didn't realize that the sideboard was entirely for time, which is crazy. So yeah, here comes a bunch of damage coming across, 1400, whatever. We'd go into game 3, I'm sure, if we were playing IRL. We draw our second floodgate, or our first floodgate piece, because Garden's not technically a floodgate here. And there's really nothing we can do. Lava Golem can pop 2 of these cards, but then we just die to the rest because we can't normal summon. So there's just nothing we can do. Kaiser Coliseum would have been good to have last turn. Unfortunate, didn't have it last turn. Drew a bunch of monsters instead, and they kind of just sat in my hand. So yeah, pretty unlucky. Sack the Lone Fire, go get Titanial, run over the Dad. The reason I'm doing this is I'm just checking to see what he's doing. He has the Titanial. We negate. I want to see if he brings back the Plague and tries to make Stardust, like how he approaches this. And then he just doesn't play around Mirror Force at all, which is interesting. But I guess it's like Mirror Force Torrential. Like you pick one, and he picked the just show as little as possible route, which is usually better. Once again, I have nothing to sideboard this game, so I'm just basically hoping that his deck is inconsistent because 45 cards should make your deck inconsistent or less consistent at seeing stuff like Heavy Storm, Dark Arm Dragon, for example, the cards that are really good against our deck. Once again, third game in a row, I draw 4 fucking monsters, and I'm just sitting here like, I can't play this. I can't play this deck. Like, what is happening? How am I drawing majority monsters in my deck with 12 monsters? Once again, none of them are Morphing Jar. I'm just like, what the hell is this? So I just, set my cards like, all right, he's at least locked under Kaiser. He'll have to do something here. But he's got the one card in his deck that can run over a Prickle Fairy. That's valid. I'm not going to negate this. I can run it over after it hits the Prickle Fairy with Botanical Lion. Or I could just defend the Prickle Fairy with Hedge Guard. Or I could just set the Hedge Guard and just be fine with this. He attacks over the Prickle Fairy. He does have a proactive summon here. He has Armageddonite. He could summon Armageddonite, make send Plague, and then Black Rose the field if he wanted to. I think that'd actually be a pretty good play here if I was him. But there's a good chance he doesn't read the Polynosis, so he's just not going to do that. He's going to send Necrogarnet to defend his Cyber Dragon. I draw Dark Bribe, and I'm like, okay, maybe I can defend my board here. I'm going to go Lone Fire into Titanial, set Dark Bribe, attack the Cyber Dragon, he'll Necro, pass the turn. The reason I attacked the Cyber Dragon is because he sent Necro. I figured if he had a way to defend this Titanial attack, he probably did side out some number of D-Prison, but yeah, you get the point. So he Necros there. He goes Lightning Vortex, so he has a Lightning Vortex, which is unfortunate. We're forced to Dark Bribe this. We could have let it resolve and then set the Hedge Guard and then save the Bribe for the follow-up removal on the Kaiser, but you will see soon that it just didn't end up mattering. Here comes Dust Tornado. We have to let that resolve. Here comes the Malicious. Bring out Malicious. Sack for Caius. Have to negate that with Titanial. Switches the Armageddonite. Attacks for 14. You'll notice his hand is very good. He has another Dust Tornado. Just every possible card that he needs to play through what we have, which is, how post-board games usually do go. Usually people have a very consistent setup for post-board games. I draw Black Garden because, again, I can't side them out because they're in my deck for some fucking reason. And Black Garden does nothing to establish boards. It does nothing here. I get the Black Garden, I set the Hedge Guard, and I activate the Garden, just like, oh, I should be fine. What does he top deck? Lo and behold, Heavy fucking Storm. So, yeah, alas, somehow, adding 5 cards to your deck means you draw Heavy Storm every time, which is crazy. But yeah, this was a frustrating game to play because I think if I had had a sideboard, I could have showcased this game or this deck a little bit better And I think if this deck was like a little bit more optimized, I could have showed off the strength of it a little bit better. Because I do think that the ideas here are very good from Tan. I just think they're a little bit unrefined and a little bit unoptimized. So, unfortunately, he's got Heavy Storm into Stratos Grepher, and that's just going to be that. So here comes Stratos. We Black Garden token here. There's just nothing we can do. The Messenger of Peace is not going to help because he got Dust Tornado. I'm basically forced to Polynosis this because if Dust Tornado resolves, then he just runs over the token, runs over the bot lion, and then I have to Polynosis sack my only monster to defend myself from the Heavy Storm that's looming. So I pretty much lose no matter what to Dust Tornado Heavy Storm. Like, this is just checkmate. He reveals he is also on Alias, which is a card he never drew, of course, because, like, why would he draw the bricky cards instead of just, like, Heavy Storm, Dark Grepher, the hella spot removal, the perfect spot removals. So there's the Polynosis. Can't attack there. He passes the turn back. We draw another bot lion. I'm just like, okay, well, if he has Heavy Storm, he has Heavy Storm. Set, flip the lion, just so it doesn't get run over. He Heavy Storms us here, and that's going to be all she wrote. We just lose. There's nothing we can do. Yeah, and I bitch in the chat a little bit because obviously it's very frustrating to want to showcase a deck that did very well in a tournament and then have to deal with, like, not only, like, getting insano sacked mode, but not having a side deck because I'm an idiot and didn't realize that I should change the side deck before recording this. So, alas, moving back to the deck itself, the big changes I would make, personally, even though this deck is great and I think it's really innovative and really cool, I would make a few changes. The big changes are I would cut every garden. I would cut every single one. I think they're all not good for this deck. They conflict with Messenger of Peace. They conflict with Kaiser Coliseum. It's just not something you want with this deck. I understand you can proc your own Rivalry, but with only 2 Rivalry, you're not going to see it consistently enough to matter. So I would go with 3 Rivalry. Actually, I would go with the full 3 Rivalry. That's the first change I would make. I would consider Upstart Goblin, like straight up. I would consider Upstart Goblin in some capacity. That is something that maybe you might want to consider. But then again, you don't want to draw into too many normal summons. That is kind of the name of the game with this deck. I think 13, I was getting a little unlucky drawing 4 every single game. But I do think 13 might be a little too high. I think you might want to go down to 12. And the one that sticks out the worst or the most is Prickle Fairy. So you'd probably cut a Prickle Fairy. And then you'd probably just find more ways to just shut your opponent out from attacking you or winning the game, basically. 7 Tools of the Bandit, Magic Jammer, all that type of stuff. Just stuff to defend your floodgates and make it so your opponent can't attack you is what I would go with. Then for the sideboard, certain things I would go with is I would cut all this time shit because, once again, I would not go into time because I'm him. No, I'm just kidding. Because most of the time when you're playing this on Dueling Book, there's no timer. Only in some, like, fringe, online, Swiss tournaments are you going to have a timer on the round. But, like, when you're playing on ladder, and when you're playing against your friends, or you're playing against, like in an 8-man tournament on a Discord, for example, the cards that you're going to want is stuff to deal with Dust Tornado, stuff to deal with that sort of thing. Breaker the Magical Warrior is, like, kind of MVP. There are a few other cards you could play in this spot. Mask of Darkness is another one that could be really solid. Because you can just set it, they'll Dust Tornado your back row, and you'll be like, all right, that sucks. But then you just get it back with Mask of Darkness, and then you're just up plus. So that could be one way you could approach this. You could approach it with, like, Breaker. But the name of the game is going to be Trap Stun and Dust Tornado post board. Those are the 2 cards you want to, like, have the most responses to. And I found that Breaker is, like, usually the most proactive. Your opponent's probably going to side out a lot of Bottomless Trap Hole, Deep Prison style effects. So Breaker is just going to be pretty good there. You could even try spot removal or sweeper removal like Mirror Force to some degree because your opponent will play into them, not expecting them. You could also try variations of draw traps, things to bait the Dust Tornadoes, etc. But that's how I would approach this deck, personally. And I think this deck is very cool. I think it's very good, and I think it's very close. I'm not sure about the Black Garden stuff. Once again, I was drawing a lot of it, and I just felt like it was not contributing to my strategy at all. And I felt like it was actually actively hurting me because I couldn't summon my guys in attack. It wasn't responding to resolved boards. It wasn't compounding the pressure of anything. Like, if anything, I don't even know. Even something like Zombie World might have more application because at least it would shut off Kaya's. Yes, it does shut off our own Lone Fires and Titanials and Bot Lion effects. I get that. It shuts those off. But, like, this would at least have some application at preventing specific pieces of spot removal like Ryza, Kaya's, that sort of thing. Even stuff like Jinzo in some decks, this could prevent. Or something like, tribute set Sirocco to get, well, I guess it doesn't prevent that at all. It prevents face-up Wing Beast with Icarus attack, too. So, like, this has some potential as, like, a one-of in this deck. Like, I could see that, you know what I mean? You can still tribute set under it, though, in Edison format, I believe. So, disregard that statement. I think there are a lot of ways you could approach this deck, but I think that this core right here, these 35 cards, I would start with this, and then figure out the last 5 cards, depending on the metagame you want to beat. All right, the next deck I played was RBET's deck, which is, once again, a variation of the Jacob Plants deck that did well in LA. I think this deck is more configured to take down specifically the metagame he predicted at RBET Santa Clara, which is going to be Vayu Turbo, Black Wings, and probably Hero Frog in some capacity. This deck looks like it does a pretty good job against those decks. I still think that there are a few issues with this deck, which I will get into after I show you guys the match. And I do like the improvements he's made from the previous version of Jacob Plants. Cutting the creature swaps makes a lot of sense. Cutting down on the deck dev targets makes a ton of sense, especially like into a field of every Vayu Turbo player main decking 2 viruses, at least, if not more. Every Blackwing player main decking virus. You know what I mean? Like, into a field where a lot of people are going to be playing those cards, cutting down on the targets makes a lot of sense. Maxing Gravity Rose and Botanical Lion, I like these changes. The one of Polynosis, interesting. Not sure I'm sold on it. Once again, both these decks played Polynosis. I do like it from an aesthetics perspective, but from like actually playing this deck, there are a few too many like hard -1 setups that I'm not a big fan of, and Polynosis is just like another one of those. So once again, I'm not also sold on playing 41 cards. I much prefer playing 40, just so you can see your Dust Shoot, your Heavy Storm, your Solemn Judgment more consistently. I think that like your percentages that you lose missing out on opening Lone Fire definitely do impact you. Not enough for RBET to get anything worse than second place, so it's not the end of the world to play 41 cards, but I do think that cuts here could be made, especially some of these fun of cuts, like maybe Polynosis or Limit Reverse. Anyway, let's get into the match. This is going to be the match against Whack, who's playing something that's off meta. So one of my biggest issues with this style of deck is how it's going to work into something that's off meta. In this case, it's going to be a Solidarity Gemini Spark hero deck. So we open up okay. I have Torrential plus Dandelion. This is like the setup I want to go for. I could have put Titanial into play turn 1, but then I have a dead Torrential because I never really want to Torrential away my Titanial. He's got main deck Royal Oppression, which, if we circle back to, most people are not main decking in Vayu Turbo and Black Wings right now. They're just not main decking it because it's not very good in the mirror match, and the mirror match is the most common matchup in the format. So because most people are not main decking it, his deck is really light on outs to Royal Oppression and has a lot of effects that play into Royal Oppression. You'll notice in my hand alone, I've got 1, 2, 3 effects that play into Royal Oppression. So half my hand is completely shut off by this card, which is unfortunate. So he's going to go normal Alias. I'm going to Torrential here because even if he sparks, like the same outcome, it's like he's just cycling a spark. And I'm okay with that. I'd rather get the spark out of hand and not have to deal with it. So yeah, that's what's happening. He's sparking. In a new chain, Dandelion will activate, get us 2 tokens. He's going to go ahead and set that Royal Oppression and pass. So there's a lot we lose to here, namely just Bottomless and Royal Oppression. Torrential's also pretty bad. But Royal Oppression's probably the worst because we drew yet another card that's dead to Royal Oppression. So I'm like, okay. I've got 3 cards here that completely stop by Royal Oppression. I've got Bottomless Trap Hole, which, as you can see, is going to run face first into this Wild Heart and not be able to do anything. And then I've got Botanical Lion, which is a fine threat to have here if my opponent doesn't have Solidarity to pump up all of his cards. So it's just like a really weird lineup against an off-meta deck that's like, it's just going to punish us because we're playing essentially a very like stripped beatdown deck that's not good into monsters that are unaffected by traps because we're playing heavy counts of battle traps, and it's not good into Royal Oppression because all of our power plays are special summon related. And it's not good into Anthems because all of our guys have kind of a fixed stat line and they don't really level up very well. Botanical Lion does level up, but just not enough to get over like a Solidarity plus an Alias, for example. So anyway, here comes the Wild Heart, tax the token, sets, activates Solidarity main phase 2, passes a turn. We draw another card, so we've drawn 5 cards that die to Royal Oppression out of the 8 that we've drawn. And we just can't play this game. Forced to pass turn. He summons the Immortal Bushi. This is normally the setup that this deck plays. It's like this combination with the Solidarity. And this is your best possible hand. You have Royal Oppression. It's shutting off 5 cards. Your opponent doesn't have an out to the Royal Oppression, and you just win off the back of that alone. Attacks for 2,000. We find Gravity Rose. Too little, too late. Gravity Rose would have been nice early on, but yeah, we got very much punished by a main deck Royal Oppression, which this deck is not built to deal with. That being said, post board he has a lot of answers. He's got double Trap Stun, double Dust Tornado, so I side them in. I bring them in. He's also got My Body as a Shield. Nice, useful card against cards like Gemini Spark, Torrential Tribute, that sort of thing, so I board that in as well. For game 2, I board out the Starlight Road. I board out a couple other cards that lose to the Royal Oppression, like, I didn't board out Limit Reverse and Call, but I did board out, I think, Polynosis, because I figured it would be kind of a dead card in general, especially against a deck that's not really resolving too many power spells that we really care about, and it's more just about, like, the amount of cards. Like, him 2 for winning us in any capacity is probably favorable for him. So we start off with Lone Fire, going to Titanial. I did side out one of the Titanials. I don't really fully understand why there's 2 Titanials in this deck quite yet. I'm sure there's a reason for it, but I sided one out because I just didn't want to draw it. I set all my cards because I assume he's not playing Heavy Storm, or if he is, he didn't side it in. He has turn 1 Exile Force for Titanial. I didn't shotgun the Limit Reverse or the Call of the Haunted in the draw phase because not only did I not predict this, but I have no way to defend a Lone Fire Blossom in the battle phase outside of a Phoenix Wing that I don't really want to play. Plus, I can just end phase Call and bring back the Titanial anyway. So we force it out there. We go end phase Call, bring back Titanial, end phase Limit Reverse, bring back Lone Fire Blossom. And now I have a difficult choice to make. Limit Reverse doesn't let me switch the Lone Fire to defense. So I can't switch this defense to play around Mirror Force. I can play around Torrential by just attacking with both, but then I play into Mirror Force. So it's a 50-50. So I decide to go play into Torrential minimally by sacrificing Lone Fire and going to get Dandelion. I think this is the safest play here. If he Torrentials, I'll still have a 2,500 bot line with Phoenix Wing and Trap Stun, and Mark of the Rose coming to close things out, so I don't feel too bad about it all. Here we're actually able to safely attack into anything that's not Mirror Force, and that's just going to work out. Main phase 2, set the Trap Stun, pass the turn. Don't need to commit the bot line quite yet. We may want to discard it to Phoenix Wing. He top decks Lightning Vortex, which sucks, and he does go for it. So, yeah, it sucks for us, but we do get 2 tokens at least. He summons the Warrior Lady of the Wasteland, runs over a token. We draw into Caius. This deck feels great. When I have Lone Fire Blossom plus Call the Haunted, my opponent doesn't have Royal Oppression. It seems pretty solid. I'm not like upset by this momentum at all. We've got Caius as a way to remove things. The only thing is like once the game gets to this point, like I've used the best cards in my deck. I still have 6 1900 monsters that I don't really want to draw in this matchup. Like they're just not hitting in this style of matchup. And so I don't know if there's a way to approach it that makes it fine, but it doesn't top deck as well as like a deck like Quick Draw, for example. If I was in this position with Quick Draw, I would love a lot of my top decks. I would love like Avarice. I would love Future Fusion. You know what I mean? I would love their Debris Dragons, 3 of those, 3 Caiuses. There's so many. Even a Quick Draw here would be very good. Whereas in this deck, I'm like looking at my hand and I'm just like, man, I really don't want to draw a Gravity Rose. I really don't want to draw another Botanical Lion. I think I sided out the Copy Plant. I really don't want to draw another Dandelion. You know what I mean? Like, most of my cards are bad top decks here. Had I not drawn a Caius and gotten incredibly lucky, I would not have been able to play through this. Like, my position is actually really bad into this. I would have had to set Botanical Lion and just build up resources, which is something I saw Brett doing a lot on camera, and I assume that that's the play pattern most of the time, but I decided to go for the Caius here because it's pretty safe. I attack into a Deep Prison. I decide to Trap Stun. I make a pretty big mistake here. I was texting or something like that, and then I flipped the Phoenix Wind Blast to just close the game out, and I'm like, lol, I Trap Stunned. And I realized it as soon as I flipped the Wind Blast, but I was like, I'll just eat the misplay. I probably win anyway. He goes E-Call, grabs Stratos, Stratos searches, and then I just mark attack for game, and it's fine. So didn't end up mattering. But you'll notice even these Barbarosses, which I sided in as a way to just counter offense stuff like Stratos or Wild Heart or whatever, going first. Going second, I side in the Cyber Dragons instead. But even this is like just not a good top deck. Like, it's an unfortunate top deck. 1900 monsters when they can pump up their monsters. The equivalent of this, I would say, is probably Machina Gadget. Against Machina Gadget, who's also playing Solidarity, I would not feel very comfortable with this deck going into a Machina Gadget matchup, just because they have repeatable, slightly stronger than 1900 monsters, and you have such a high density of that stat line that, and you don't have really utility beyond that. You don't have like the 1900 monsters aren't also doing something else. Like in Flamvell style decks, your Fire Dog can also like ladder. So like if even one of them connects, all of a sudden you have a Stardust Dragon. If I connect with a Botanical Lion here, it doesn't really ladder into a Stardust Dragon the same way. Or if I connect with a Gravity Rose, I get 2 tokens, which is always nice, but it doesn't really level up in a way that I think is super meaningful. So yeah, attack for 18, and we win game 2. So just a little bit of a weakness I'm noticing into maybe some of these off-meta like beatdown strats. This game, our opponent has a very similar hand to the hand they had game 1. They have the Alias, the Spark, and the Solidarity, so that's really good. Our hand, however, is just unplayable. This is a very bad hand. He draws Compulsory Evacuation Device, which is very unfortunate for us because it is one of the few things that we can't play around with this type of hand. So he goes Armageddonite, send the Bushi, set, pass, or activate Solidarity, set the Compulse, pass. Had we had like a Heavy Storm or a Dust Tornado here, I would have felt a lot more confident about my options. I decided to just set 2 and pass. He could have summoned the Alias here and been pretty fine, honestly. I'm surprised he didn't. He decides to summon the Bushi instead. He attacks with the Bushi. We flip the Deep Prison. He attacks with the Armageddonite. I just flip another Deep Prison because I don't want to take damage. I've got my body as a shield, which is going to be very costly, so I'm basically at 6,500 life points this game. Passes a turn back. I draw Gravity Rose with no plants. Not only that, but Gravity Rose just doesn't do anything into Solidarity. And we don't really have a side deck where we can afford to side this card out. It's kind of too critical to our deck. And unfortunately, we didn't have it on the first turn to be able to maybe defend it with Deep Prison with like another plant in hand, but there's a couple of options we could do. We could summon the Gravity Rose, try to bait a Deep Prison or a Bottomless, but if he just doesn't Deep Prison or Bottomless it dies in the end phase. And there's a good chance he won't because he can just run it over with Bushi for free on his next turn. So there's really no reason for him to waste a card on this Gravity Rose. So it's not even a good bait here, which is very frustrating. I can Foolish and then Miracle Fertilizer a Titanial out. I can also Foolish, bring Miracle Fertilizer out of Lone Fire, and then sack the Lone Fire and go get Titanial that way as well. That would leave me with an extra plant in the grave for Mark of the Rose. And it would also set up Debris Dragon top deck a little bit more. But I decide that I'd rather top deck Lone Fire into Dandelion after putting Titanial into play, provided the Titanial sticks around. So I decided to go for Foolish Titanial, Miracle Fertilizer out the Titanial, and then set them my body as a shield. We played around Bottomless, we played around Torrential, Mirror Force, Deep Prison, we played around... We didn't play around Solemn Judgment or Space Typhoon Dust Tornado. We didn't play around Discard Traps, really, and we didn't play around Compulsory. But we played around all of the most like commonly played stuff. The only card that would have got us like really for good here would have been Royal Oppression, of course. But this Compulsory, it's okay. It means we'll have a plant in hand to reveal to Gravity Rose, but I need a way to deal with his repeatable monsters. I need a Dust Tornado. If I don't have a Dust Tornado for the Solidarity, then I can't play the game. We're 7 cards deep into the deck. I think I have something like maybe 10 outs that I could have drawn, but yeah, it's just a little bit unlucky. Normal's the Alias. We're just dying to this. Like, there's nothing we can do. There's no Warrior in the grave, but this doesn't matter. These are supposed to be a little bit weaker, but it doesn't matter. We take 3,100 here, right? We draw for turn, and it's Starlight Road, which I had sided back in after seeing the Lightning Vortex in game 2. And it didn't even matter that there was no Warrior in the grave here, because what am I supposed to do? Summon Gravity Rose, get Sparked, on his turn he summons the Alias and then just deals lethal? Like, that's just the game either way. There's nothing we can do here. We can Mark of the Rose. No, we can't, because we don't have a plant in our grave, because I didn't pick Lone Fire here. But even if I could Mark of the Rose here, it's just Mark, take Alias, run into the Bushi, I guess. Like, and that just gets met with Spark. So there's really nothing I can do in this particular circumstance, which is very unfortunate. This is just a really unfortunate circumstance. I noticed this deck is probably weak to this sort of, even if, let's just assume it's not Bushi plus Solidarity, which is like kind of gimmicky, but let's assume it's a more commonly played version of this deck, which is like Captain Gold Skyscraper even that is going to be very good against our deck. So I'm seeing a pretty large hero beat type of weakness for this type of strategy. Stuff like Hero Blast is very scary. Stuff like Skyscraper, once again, is very scary. And yeah, Skill Drain doesn't do anything against this type of deck. So our most powerful sideboard plan, it just doesn't do anything against this sort of rogue strategy. I said I drew so badly. I did draw very badly this game. I think I mill out all this stuff I could have drawn that would have been fine. And I had a ton of ways to play through back row, or just like extend past all of this. And it was like several. I mean, this is like 19 cards I would have loved to draw at any point this game, but I just didn't draw them, which is unlucky, but it is what it is, you know. Had we drawn the debris, we could have set it up a little bit better with the Foolish for Dandy. How we drawn like Solemn Judgment, Trap Stun, Dust Tornado, whatever. I think too many of these Might Body as a Shield, Starlight Road effects, plus these like Mark of the Rose style effects, they can really start to get clunky, especially with like Miracle Fertilizer and a deck that's full of normal summons. So I don't know. My thoughts on this deck are probably cut it to 40, slim on some of the payoff cards maybe. I think like some of the Monster Reborns, you don't need 4 probably. You could probably cut like Limit Reverse. You could probably cut Polynosis. You could probably cut into the 1900 monsters. Like you could probably cut like 1 Botanical Lion. And then you could probably fit like some generic good cards. Or just Upstart Goblins to like guarantee seeing your Dust Shoot or guarantee seeing your Heavy Storm or whatever. Something like that, I think, could take this deck another level further. Something that could help you in like more wide variety of matchups that I considered was 1 copy of Sangan and 1 copy of Quick Draw. I think Drill Warrior is a really good way to just like beat random decks. I can't imagine Quick Draw is much worse than Copy Plant in this deck, because I think Copy Plant is like inherently a pretty bad card. I understand Copy Plant does ladder these guys into Stardust Dragon, and that's useful. I do understand that you can bring it back with Miracle Fertilizer or bring it out with Lone Fire, and it does give you utility in that direction, but just Quick Draw and Sangan are insanely good tournament-winning cards, and they're good into a wide variety of decks. So, food for thought. Maybe Copy Plant's still worth it. Who knows? But those are the changes that I would test with this type of deck if I was going to take it to maybe a locals or like play it on DB where the metagame is a little bit less defined than it would be at an RBET. I think this deck was a very good meta, adapted very well for the meta at Santa Clara, but I do think that it may end up struggling with some of the more rogue choices. Yeah, that's going to be my analysis of these two decks. The Black Garden deck, I'm not really certain why Black Garden's in this deck other than just vibes, and I think the side deck is just like not good for online play or for even like local play, or now that people know how to play against it, they just like they'll just play fast and then your time cards don't do anything. Like, so it's kind of one of those things that this sideboard strategy has to actually change after this tournament, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you view being stalled into time. But I do think that it just has to change if you want to win consistently with a strategy like this. And then with this deck, I think some minor like improvements could be made for sure. But shout out to both these players for topping with something really unique and really cool and giving me a video to brick with, basically. No, giving me something interesting to think about, because I do think that this Black Garden deck, this Garden Salad deck from Tan, is something I never would have thought of. Like, Polynosis to defend Floodgates is really smart. I'm sure there's something you could cook here with, like, possibly even Dandy tokens, or just, like, Dandelion. Just because Dandelion is such a good defensive threat. Possibly. I'm sure there's something you could cook here. For sure. This is, like, very close to being a very strong control deck. I think that this is it just needs a sideboard strategy, like a real sideboard strategy that counters common sideboard cards, and then it also needs, not 5 Black Gardens, which you're going to brick on guaranteed throughout a match. But yeah, that's that. Shout out to these players once more, and I'll see you guys in the next vid. Peace.